At the New Jersey SBDC Network, our mission is simple: to help businesses grow and succeed. Our consulting, training, and information services make it easier for businesses to reach their potential. Whether you're currently in operation or just starting out, we have the right tools, resources, and expertise to help you succeed. Visit us online to get started on your path to success today.
A pleasant good afternoon to everyone. My name is Takoa Bell. I am one of the event coordinators for the NJS BDC at Rutgers-Newark. And on behalf of Dr. Tendai Enduro, our regional director, I would like to welcome you all to our e-commerce planning part 2 intermediate webinar. For those of you here that may be unfamiliar with the SBDC, it stands for Small Business Development Centers. And here at the New Jersey Small Business Development Centers at Rutgers-Newark, we serve as the premier provider of business training and technical assistance services to establish small businesses, startups, and to entrepreneurs. We are one of 12 centers in the NJSBDC network, and we service those in Essex County. Our center is hosted by the Rutgers Business School and funded through a partnership agreement between the Small Business Administration, Rutgers University, and the New Jersey Business Action Center. Our mission here is to help entrepreneurs as well as business owners start and grow sustainable, successful businesses through the delivery of one-on-one business consulting, training, and technical assistance programs. Now, all these services are provided to you at no cost and are paid for by your tax dollars. So if you or your business is located in Essex County, our website is www.rnsbdc.com. And on the top right-hand corner of our site, we have a red button labeled Request Counseling. So clicking on that button will lead you to fill out some information about your business or your business idea. And within 24 to 48 business hours, one of our consultants will reach out to you for an assessment. And for those of you here that may not be in Essex County, our headquarters website is www.njsbdc.com. And on that website, you can type in your county and it will refer you to your local SBDC office. For the benefit of everyone attending today's webinar, we will be taking questions via the chat and the Q&A feature here on Zoom. So please feel free to post and ask your questions, and we will do our best to respond during or at the end of today's webinar. A copy of the presentation slides along with a video recording of this webinar will be emailed to you within 48 to 72 business hours so that you can have all this information to refer to long after the webinar has ended. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you all our presenter for today's webinar, Ahmet Akdag. Ahmet is the CEO and owner of Styremont and is an SBDC consultant here at the NJS BDC at Rutgers-Newark in the areas of e-commerce, self-hosted and marketplaces, BC and B2B online strategic planning, and supply chain sourcing. And now, without further ado, I will turn today's webinar over to Ahmet.
Thank you, Takoa. Good afternoon, everybody. So our webinar today is going to be digging in a bit more. If you had attended the part one was mainly about the e-commerce ecosystem in general, give you an idea of of the different methods of doing e-commerce, the different types of marketplace, online retailers, selling on your own website. Helped coming up with your plan to get into e-commerce or pivot into e-commerce, or maybe just refresh your understanding of e-commerce if you're already in the business. But the second part is going to be digging in a bit more to one of the more critical aspects of e-commerce, which is getting customers to buy the products. And to do that, what is really required in regards to the content you put for the products. Now, this is going to be a general look at content, templates, and vital data. Different categories have different ways and different nuances. Some marketplaces and retailers, if you go down that route, have certain rules and guidelines. So it might not apply to every category, but these are the fundamentals that will be necessary, because when someone's shopping e-commerce, they are essentially trying to gauge whether they're going to purchase your product based on the information that you are providing them, both visually, with videos, and with the bullet points, descriptions, things like that, to decide if they want to actually, go forward with adding your product to the cart. So the most basic product data is title, of course. Everywhere is going to have a title. Some places might have certain guidelines to how the title is written, especially if you are doing a supplier level relationship with online retailers. They tend to have guidelines on how they want their titles written out, because they have certain setups on their back end for their catalog, and they want everything standardized in a certain way. Usually it's standardized within a category, not the entire website. So if you are onboarding with an online retailer as a supplier, they will give you a guide, a content guide or product content guide, to help you figure out what style they want the titles in, because titles affect search term visibility. It's the first thing the customers see. In regards to search term visibility, it's your titles are sort of like your initial keywords. They have an impact in whenever something is searched. Titles are what are being looked at, beyond other keywords inside. Titles tend to be the predominant ones that pop up for that. So you want to make sure that your titles are containing the most important features that you believe will hook the customer to your product. It's the most important thing next to images. There is usually a limit to how long it can be. It can be a soft limit or a hard limit. It can be both. Soft limit is just maybe it gets cut off, but you have the full title on the actual page. But in the catalog, it gets cut off, or on mobile devices, especially, it tends to get long titles, then you get chopped off, and because not the entire title can't be displayed. And hard limits are set by the marketplaces and the retailers, where they'll say, maybe you can only have 120 characters, things like that, where they put a hard cap in how long the title can be. So that's something to keep in mind. Next thing we have is bullet points for written content. Bullet points are the next thing. Once your title has hooked somebody in along with the image, bullet points are the things that they were going to be looking at. Generally, 5 bullet points is common. Certain marketplaces and retailers have certain distinctions in their bullet points. Some have kind of like a 3 highlighted bullet points, and then the other bullet points get stuck somewhere else. Some might actually have a lot more than 5 bullet points. If you're building your own website, generally speaking, you will have a lot more flexibility in how many bullet points you can add. But 5 is kind of the average, and that's pretty much what Amazon has, 5 bullet points. And these bullet points should each highlight some kind of important information, instructions, color, size, design, any safety notices. We will be hitting these topics in detail in the coming slides, but this kind of outlines that, with bullet points, with the title you hook in, with the bullet points you hit the additional key features that you think will inspire the customer to actually add the cart. Description and details is a bit more different. Description and details are more for the customers that want to know more. They will generally be towards the bottom of the page, or under the image titled bullet points. They will be longer. There is a bit more details. Some details are fixed fields, if the marketplace has that set up that way. And some will just be open text box, and you just dump in the information that you want to add additionally. And then for images and videos, average of 5 or 6 images are recommended, but you can add more. You don't have to go overboard with images unless your product has enough distinctive images that are necessary for it. So some people will like to reach that 5 or 6 images, take different angles, but that's not a core requirement. You just want to make sure that you have 5 or 6 images and one lifestyle image. Some marketplaces use a different name for that, and I'll show you on the slide what I mean by that. Style image is essentially the product in a environment where it would normally be used or normally be kept, normally be applied to. That's what a lifestyle image refers to. And some marketplaces actually allow videos, and they're slowly starting to, more marketplaces are starting to allow videos to be uploaded. There'll usually be a restriction on how long the videos can be and some guidelines to what can be in the video, but videos have been showing up, and it's a great opportunity for both brands marketing as well as product marketing, especially if it's a type of product that would work really well in some kind of video demonstration, whether it's assembly or application, or you're just manipulating the product to show different ways it works or show the interior, things like that. And it can help boost your listing just by being in there. There's different marketplaces have algorithms that affect the rankings, and they check metrics for your content. It's hard to say because it's all proprietary information, but every single one of these things all affect that metric. So you want to have the best possible and most substantial amount of information without going overboard, because they have systems in place to check that to make sure people aren't just spamming words in. If you have high quality content, that will help in the long run with your listings in most marketplaces. Keywords are more of a back end thing, but you definitely want to make sure that in any marketplace you set up in, even if it's your own website, you're putting in keywords, because keywords can help with search visibility and search algorithms. And as long as you have those keywords in there, sometimes your keywords will also be pulled from bullet points and descriptions, but you should still make sure that all the relevant keywords are placed into wherever the keywords are placed in, depending on whichever marketplace you're selling on. And then dimension. This information is not for every category. Dimension also can be size, depending on the type of product. But most places have a kind of specifications area or technical details area where they want, this kind of additional information, where you'll have colors, you'll have sizes, you'll have length, width, diameter, temperatures, if it's a product that has that kind of temperature thing in it. If you're selling lights, for example, it'll ask for like the wattage and lumens. So there's different kind of technical information depending on the category. So by dimensions, I also mean all the information regarding the technical specifications of product, as well as shipping dimensions. Shipping dimensions are important. You want to make sure you have accurate shipping dimensions as well, and that goes a bit more into the logistics aspect of it, but dimensions are important to have inside of your content. So starting with the title, I have here apparel from Amazon. As you can see, there's two different types of titles here. Well, technically three, because one is a bit of a variation of other. You can see two titles in the first and third product are very short, very straightforward. Reason for this is because these are variations. So when you actually open that listing, it will show you probably more title information. Whereas they also have longer titles where instead of doing it that way, the seller wanted to immediately start with some information from the get-go. As you can see, regular and big and tall. Obviously, there's a short cap there, so you can see you got cut off with the ellipsis. And then the last one, you can see where they wrote 4-pack, which means that because they are selling in packs, they want to make sure that shoppers realize that this comes in a pack ahead of time if that's what somebody's looking for. And obviously they did the same with the image. But this is where titles come into play. You want to make sure it's this is where you're hooking the customers, whether it's your own website, whether it's any marketplace, is what is going to catch their attention. Most titles will more or less seem similar in categories. as you can see here, you see like men's crew t-shirt and then men's long sleeve. There will be that, but what people are actually looking for is not really the colors, because if it's a variation, there will usually be, they'll know as soon as they click on it, they'll be able to see those. But what they want to see is what features they might be looking for. So as you can see in this one, the second one, they wrote workwear, pocket, and then short sleeve. Obviously, the image has a short sleeve in the pocket, but the workwear aspect is probably targeting anybody who is looking for workwear. So you need to keep those in mind when you're creating your titles. You want to make sure that you're hooking the customer depending on what kind of customers you want to hook and what is your product's main pitch. Titles are the pitch for your product. When a customer sees it, they need a reason to click on it other than the price. Of course, price is going to affect them if they are comparing your product to all the other products they see that they think are similar, and they will probably want to check. If they are shopping, they will open multiple items, but if they kind of know what they're looking for, they might go with the price that they think is ideal. But even then, they will. This is where it goes into the second part, where they will then begin comparing additional content beyond the title. So you want to make sure your title is high quality, so you can at least make sure that even if they don't pick you immediately, you are in that comparison pool. Common format here, it refers to a typical guideline that I've seen in a lot of marketplaces and in their guides. They usually like to set it up this way because of the kind of logic they use with their robots that they have running in the back end for their sites, where they will have the brand, the design, the category or type, and type if they have that kind of distinction, and then size, and then color. There are obviously variations on this, but because they want to have standardized catalogs that can allow them to automate things on their side, this tends to be a kind of popular average style for most titles. So it doesn't hurt if you adopt something similar to this. If you're not required to, it's optional, but I recommend it. Otherwise, if you are required to, then you pretty much have no choice to follow along the guidelines anyway. You can make small adjustments. So maybe when you're after you enter the brand and you're entering the design, you can maybe add a feature before the design or a feature after the design. You can add some. Your color can be. It doesn't have to be just a straight blunt. You might have a unique color. You can mention that unique color in there. So maybe you don't have purple, you have maroon, or you have burgundy. Maybe you don't have red, you have crimson, or scarlet. You can use that kind of terminology in your title to really kind of emphasize that this is the color for that product. And then on the back end, technically, you would be entering it as red or purple, because marketplaces, as I said, when it comes to standardization, they do want standard colors written out, but those aren't the marketing aspects of it. The marketing aspect, you have some of that flexibility as well. What I usually recommend is that you research your category in whatever marketplace you're selling on. Take a look at the top sellers, see how they have their products titled, because if you're going to be creating a title in a marketplace, customers are probably used to shopping along that title style. So if you make it similar but you're pushing your own features, it makes their comparison a little bit easier. Now, this isn't a requirement. You are able to test titles as long as you are able to and not stuck in a guideline. You are able to test your titles out in any way you want. But I've generally found that mitigating customer confusion and making sure that it's easy for them to do their shopping comparisons tends to help speed up the process and make sure that your items show up in that comparison pool. So that is something that you can consider when you are listing your product. Alternatively, maybe you're just not really sure how to do your titles, so you can take a look, see how people are doing it, and adopt accordingly to save you some time in regards to coming up with a title. So we're going to jump to images first, because that's what follows after titles. Lifestyles are what I said as the product in the environment that it would be used in or found in or applied to. So in this case, you can see that it is an office space. It might be hard to tell from this lifestyle image because there's no title, but you you would probably guess that the product being focused on is the office chairs, which in this case it is. This is an office chair lifestyle image. Because they have the product in the center. Technically, this isn't the best kind of lifestyle because one thing about lifestyle images is that A, you do want to make sure that you represent the environment, but B, you do also want to make sure that the product is very clearly in focus. So customers, as soon as they see it, they're not wondering whether these other things in the picture are somehow involved in the product. And some marketplaces will actually tell you that if they find that your lifestyle image isn't focused enough, they will actually tell you to upload a new image because they're basically going to say that according to their guidelines, your image is not sufficiently focused enough on the actual product to make sure the customers don't get confused. But in this case, this isn't the best, but it's decent. It's the office chairs. It is in an office environment, and this is the life's main image for the product and listing. Minimum for lifestyles and most images in general should be 1,000 by 1,000. You should definitely have it higher, but not too excessively high. If your image file is too large a size, that can be a problem on listing, uploading them. So make sure you're not uploading something that's megabytes upon megabytes. Keep it to 3 to 5 megabytes. Maybe your lifestyle can be 3 to 5. Some marketplaces will actually have a limit on how much you can do. I generally recommend aiming for about 3 megabytes for an image. But if you, that's fine. Try to make it a square if possible. It's not possible for everything, but it should try to get a square image in because the way that marketplaces have their image boxes set up is usually as kind of square. And the reason for a minimum 1,000 by 1,000 is because the ability to zoom. So if you were to click on this image on the website on Amazon, it would pop up and then you would get like a you would get a lens that would let you zoom in so you can take a look. Now for a lifestyle image, that's not really something that people do, but if it's we're gonna go into main images next, white background images of the actual product. In those cases, sometimes depending on the product, people want to see a bit more detail, and having a higher resolution picture means that they will actually be able to zoom in and see a bit more of that detail. Usually for lifestyles, 1 is sufficient. You should aim for a minimum of 1. It can be an additional cost depending on the product. Some people do CGI, which in this case just means they Photoshop. They'll have their product in a white background, and then they'll cut the product out of that white background and then apply it into a picture of an environment where that product would probably be in, if they found a nice background image where they can squeeze that into. That does obviously run into copyright issues, so it's usually best if you buy the stock photo and make sure you have a commercial license with it, so you don't run into copyright issues. Because if you're just taking images off Google that are background images and putting your product in it, you could run into copyright issues because you are pretty much taking a image without having it licensed. So stock photos I recommend to see, and if you can find a background you can use for that, and then you can just Photoshop it or have someone Photoshop it, where it's cheaper than actually having a set up where you have the product placed into it. So that's something to keep in mind. But 1 is enough. If you do have the budget to have more, and if your product is something that you want to display in more areas, you could do that. For example, there are rug sellers who have like a rubber mat, for example, an indoor rubber mat, and they will show it in a kitchen. They will show it in the garage. They will show it in out maybe the front of the door, the entryway. In those cases, they have multiple lifestyles because they're showing their product in different uses within the house. But in the case of office chairs here, for example, it's used in an office usually. So 1 image of it in an office will suffice. You don't need a model in the image. In fact, usually I don't recommend having a model. Some marketplaces kind of make that an issue. So your first lifestyle image should not have a person in it. You can make that a second thing. But first image, you should try to have just the product in some kind of setting. what might be easiest for you if you're worried about the costs of getting a lifestyle image done in a set. You don't really have the Photoshop abilities, or you don't really want to pay somebody for that. You could always check with the manufacturer or the distributor to see if they already have pre-existing lifestyle images or anything that would qualify as a lifestyle image. You might have to ask them if there's an image of a product inside of it, whatever setting it's being used in. So check with them. They might have it, and they usually give it to you for free. I haven't really heard of distributors asking for money for the images with somebody who from them as a supplier. So feel free to and distributor and see if they can give you these images, and that will be the most cost-effective way early on to get that kind of imagery going. Now, the rest of the imagery, again, 1,000 by 1,000 recommended as the minimum. 5 or 6 images, and that's because 5 or 6 images will usually fill out that carousel of product images in most marketplaces, as well as on your website. People will see that there are multiple images to choose from. It looks nicer, it affects the content metrics on marketplaces, and it's usually sufficient to give customers an idea of the product, as long as you're putting the right kind of images and making sure that the item is getting full representation. Items should, at least the product itself, should be on a clear or white background for best results. As you can see here, the platform bed is on a white background, and it is a high resolution. So if I were to look at this on actually Wayfair and click on it, it would zoom in to the product, and I would be able to see the additional details on the platform bed. Now with this one, obviously, maybe it's the fiber text, the upholstery I might want to take a look at. But if I was selling some kind of furniture item or some kind of item that has the detailing on it, and I wanted the customers to see that detailing, I would want to make sure I have a high resolution image where if they clicked on it, they could actually zoom in and see that detailing. And you can have different angles. I try to recommend not making all the images just different angles unless your product has something different on different sides. I usually see that customers will want to see different kinds of product images. They will want to see maybe 1 or 2 angles if it makes a distinction of front or back, if there's something different between them. A close-up shot where they get really detailed image where it's a high resolution close-up. If they click on it, they are going to zoom in quite a bit and get a lot of detail out of that one. And also anything else on that product. Maybe it's a certain accessory piece. Maybe it's an item that you can break down, or maybe you want to show the inside of the item. Maybe there's certain parts on that item that makes a full item during assembly. You'll have it without those parts, you'll have it with those parts. The idea here and the logic that you have when you are doing these images is you want the customer to have an idea of the product. Imagine if the customer physically had the product in front of them. How would they be looking at it? What would they be looking at? What would they be touching? You want to make sure that they get enough of the image representation that it's almost like as if they had visually inspected, physically inspected the product themselves. Obviously, touch, feel, smell, that thing is not going to transmit, but in regards to that visualization in their mind, if you can get images in there that kind of hit those points, those are the 5 or 6 images you should have. If you're having a hard time figuring out how to have images like that for your product, always feel free to look on the marketplaces for similar products and see how they have it listed, especially the best sellers, and then just do this something similar to how they have it set up in regards to the different perspectives and zooms and close-ups and angles and what kind of image formats they have. That will at least help you get an idea of how to set up your images early on when you are starting to list your product on the marketplaces. So for videos, like I said, marketplaces are slowly, and online retailers are slowly rolling these out. Now, not everywhere has videos yet, because the main issue with videos is that they are more resource intensive, both for sellers and for the marketplace or retailer, because they use up more bandwidth. They take up a lot more storage space. So they want to make sure that on their end, their infrastructure is actually set up to handle videos. So not everybody will have that, but it is becoming a lot more common than it used to be. Videos will generally be less than a minute or up to a minute. I haven't really seen any marketplaces where more than a minute is common. Plus, most people don't really watch a video that's more than a minute. Now, there is a caveat here, especially if you are using it on your own website. If it's a video about installation, assembly, and that kind of technical component, then your video should be as long as it needs to be to make sure that that customer is gets all the information they need and feels confident enough that they've received the instructions they need. But for a marketing video, 1 minute or less than 1 minute is ideal, because you are just presenting the product and kind of adding a bit more content aspects to it. You will usually have some kind of either a narrative or you'll have music playing. Most people usually have music playing because there isn't much to narrate in a lot of products. But if your product can be narrated and you have the budget for that, you can do that, but it doesn't have to be. Music and captions or text inside of it is sufficient, and it'll probably be a bit more cost effective. Now, if you don't have your own studio, if you don't have skill with using a video camera and the tools to do video editing, you can always try to find either freelancers or find a studio that can do it for you. Studios can be quite expensive per item per video. Freelancers can be hit or miss depending on their actual skills. So I don't recommend making videos a priority for you. But again, this is for marketing videos. If you are able to make a video about the product's application, its use, its assembly, you should, and you should upload it to wherever you can, because that is perfect content. Not perfect content, but the perfect video for your product, because customers will be able to watch your video on your page or on your listing to understand how to put the product together, or how to install the product, or how to apply the product. So you definitely should try to make that at least. But when it comes to the marketing one, you do want to have a bit of a budget for creating the actual content, because it needs to be high quality. It can be as simple as an animated slideshow of pictures with additional text. I don't recommend this unless you can get away with it with certain products. For example, when it comes to home goods, you could do that, because with home goods, your customers are getting the full picture of the product visually. So putting that into a video with still images with text in it and making video like that, that's fine. But if you can't do that kind of variation on your product with imagery, for example, with apparel, it just doesn't really work that well with apparel sometimes, unless you really have other high quality content, maybe lifestyle images, maybe you have people outside who are wearing your apparel, for example, or using your appliance, stuff like that. But those are extra efforts. When it comes to these kind of products, the image is already there and they're just sticking it into an animation basically and putting music over it. You can do something like that. So you have a lot of flexibility in how you can do it, but just keep in mind that videos are not required. So if you don't feel like you can get a good video going for a content video, don't push yourself to put out a video just for the sake of having a video. Now, your focus again should be, if you can make a video about instruction, an instructive video, you should definitely make that. But if you can't make a good content video, if you feel like it's not going to be that great, you can hold off on it until later and then introduce that later on. And one thing to keep in mind is, if you are going to make a content video, your branding should be either restricted to the start or end of the video, because some marketplaces and retailers don't permit branding inside of the actual video as it plays. So what they will make you do is remove it, and it's a lot easier to remove branding if you've kept your branding at the beginning or end of the video, because you can just have it cut out of the final video. So they would just snip it off from the front or the end, and the rest of the video would there. If you injected a lot of branding stuff into your middle of your video, now branding doesn't mean your logo. Branding means that your logo plus some stuff about your brand or your company, whether it's pictures of your brand and company things or anything that's not relevant to the specific product. If you put that in the middle of the video, it's going to be a bit of an editing headache. So you want to avoid that. So if you keep a note that your branding should be in the beginning or the end, if you are going to include it at all, just make sure you put it there. So if a retailer or marketplace says you need to remove it, it's a lot easier to remove. Now, bullet points. There's different things you can do with coming up with bullet points. First one, obviously, is check what others are doing. Second one is what do you consider the key features for your product? And consider that you're often limited to 5 short to medium highlights. Think about what you will be putting there. What do you want the customer to see after they've seen your title, seen your image, opened the product up to continue their comparison? They are going to look at your bullet points and they want to see the features that they can compare to others, or they want to see the features that hopefully push them over the fence to actually buy your product. So think about what you consider to be the most important things to know about your product. A thought experiment here is assume that there's no image or title. What would you be putting in there to describe the product to somebody? You have 5 bullet points and you need to describe the product, and you need to give them an idea of the product in those bullet points. You can think of it that way. Another thing you can do is you can create your bullet points and then show it to somebody, and they don't have a title or image, they only have your bullet points. See what they visualize, see what they understand. If they can figure out what type of product it is and have a general idea of what the product is, maybe they can, because in the bullet points you can add size, you can add color. As you can see here, this is a Macy's listing for a perfume, and with perfumes you have the scents and the notes, in the base, middle, top notes. So what they did here was they dedicated 3 bullet points to the exact type of scent within each of the notes, and then a how to use, which is where they just put in some information about how to use it. And so if you were just looking at this, you would see top note, middle note, base note. You would say, okay, it's some kind of scent, and then you would see how to use, and then it would just directly say spray on. So you're like, okay, it's a perfume spray. Now the other 2 bullet points here are because it's just a Macy's thing, so those are added there just because that's how the retailer has set up. In other places, usually what they will have, for example, what I've seen with flooring products and textiles is they'll usually add the size, they'll add the color, they'll add certain features. So if it's like a non-slip product, or if it was apparel and it's like sweat wicking, they'll add that. They'll usually add materials as an aspect of it, because usually people shopping for either apparel or flooring products tend to look at the type of material that's used. Is it synthetic, is it cotton, is it wool? They'll take a look at that. And then one of the bullet points will be cleaning instructions on how they should clean that product. So if your product like that, obviously if you're shopping and you're looking at this apparel or flooring product, what matters to you is it going to fit in my area? You have the size there. The color, obviously there's a picture there, but the color will be written out too sometimes. Is it the material I'm looking for? I'm looking for natural material. Does it have natural fibers? And cleaning instructions. How do I take care of this product? I need to know how to take care of this product. Having that information there is obviously beneficial. So this will change by category, but you should have an understanding now of what bullet points should be doing. They should be providing the key features as well as the most vital information to a customer who is shopping. So if they are doing comparison, they can gauge, or if they are not 100% sure if they're going to buy the product yet, but they've clicked on it, your bullet points should be helping them get over the fence there and actually move into purchasing. So bullet points are vital right after images and titles, and they're very you can perfect your bullet points. There will never really be a static bullet point. You will get customer feedback. You'll maybe make changes to your product. Different things can happen where your bullet points can always be updated. You just want to make sure that you are starting off with the best possible bullet points that you think will work for the customers and inspire the customers. Now we get to descriptions and details. Descriptions and details are sort of substantive in regards to the amount of information put into it, but customers might not always actually look at them when they're doing their shopping, unless they are curious a bit more and they want to learn a bit more about the product. A lot of times you'll have customers who more or less have a general idea what they're looking for. They see the title, they see the images, they see the bullet points, and they're like, okay, I'm going to purchase this product, and they don't even check the descriptions. So this can be good and bad depending on whether there's certain unique things that they need to know in the descriptions, in which case you'll probably get some feedback from the customers and say, okay, I should probably put this in my bullet point because the customers are not reading my descriptions. And the reality is, the more down the list we go, the less likely customers are to really be in depth. I have seen situations where customers even missed bullet points, and somehow because just off of the title and the image, they bought a product, and then they reached out to the seller and they complained about something that was explicitly written in the bullet points. So that can happen, doesn't always happen, but that just gives you an idea that your first vital content should hit all the necessary points. You shouldn't leave off certain things to other aspects of it, because as you go down this list, there's less likely people looking at it, but you should still include everything. So in descriptions, you'll include all the other stuff. What some people do is in the descriptions, they'll just put their bullet points in and then expand on them. That's always an option. You can also put in a lot of other information that maybe not every customer will be interested in, but maybe somebody who is has an understanding of. So for example, this is a description for a 4K LED LG television, 65 inches size. As you can see in the description here, it mentions quad core processor 4K, filmmaker mode, HDR10 HLG, low input lag. Someone who's buying a TV and doesn't really care too much, like they might care that they want a good TV, but they're not really a TV tech person. They don't really dig into the tech details of it. They're just looking for a TV that is the right size, that seems to have the right keywords, and has the right price. And in which case, they would look at the LG TV. They would see it's a big TV. They would see it mentioned 4K. I don't have the bullet points or the title here, but that is how they had it listed. They had just the name of the TV with the 4K, the size, and then the price. And in this case, this product was on sale, which was going to be promoting more people to consider buying because people see that discount. In which case, the person would look at that and be like, okay, I'm probably going to get this TV. But sometimes you'll have people who are a bit more smart shoppers, I would say, who want to see more information, in which case you want to make sure that you actually provide that information, because you want to make sure you are getting every possible customer to purchase your product, and you are hitting all the points you need to make sure that happens. So descriptions can be your bullet points and any additional extra information that you don't really need to put in your bullet points, because they're a bit more detailed, they're a bit more technical, they're a bit more nuanced. That it's not something that people might be using to gauge their purchasing, but it can help to have that information. So you will go ahead and put that in your descriptions. Some marketplaces will have a specification with fixed fields, and then you will just be inputting the information. So in this case, you can see here, it says display technology. So on the back end, and this is a supplier relationship. So this one will obviously have that specs. The company, in this case LG, would be having to fill out a template, which we'll get to about how this content is uploaded soon. But fill out a template that will ask, display technology, resolution, connector type, is smart, format, and these will be in the template for that category of product, and then they will just enter the information you see on the right side. So display tech, LED, resolution 4K 2160p. That information is just a field with a fixed information request, and then you enter in whatever it is that you need to enter in there. And specs will usually be attached to descriptions. They will either be under it, next to it, usually under it. Rarely will you have specs above description. It can happen, but it's usually description followed by specs. But this is where you put in the extra information for your product, as well as in some cases, some marketplaces will actually allow you to have maybe like a paragraph where you provide a brand story, a brand vision, a company intro, a company story, anything like that. You can go a bit broader there, and you're able to kind of put in that one paragraph in there. Now, it's not a hard one paragraph limit. It's just that I recommend that if you are allowed to put in branding in the description, you limit yourself to one paragraph about the brand, because the rest of the description should be about the actual product. And you fill this out with whatever you think is relevant. Again, as I'd mentioned, everybody else selling similar products, see how they have it set up, and then do it your own way accordingly. Now, keywords can be generated in a lot of different ways. I'm not going to say crudest, but the most simplest way to come up with it is search terms. So this, as you can see, this is an Amazon search bar, and I entered bookshelf, and then Amazon gave me a bunch of common bookshelf search terms. These search terms can be used as keywords if it is relevant to your product. So if I am selling a bookshelf for kids that's white with doors, I would use bookshelf kids, bookshelf white, bookshelf with doors. Those are the keywords I would adopt. Bookshelf is the base word I'm using to see what other options there are. These aren't the only options. These are just what Amazon is saying are either what I'm looking for, because it's going off of my cookie information that they are tracking. So they're giving me what they think might be relevant to what I'm shopping for. Alternatively, and I recommend if you are doing a keyword search, open if you're on Firefox, open private. I think Internet Edge is the same thing. And then on Chrome, it's incognito. And the reason you're doing that is, one, you don't want to erase your cookies every time you want to do keyword research. That can get a bit annoying. And two, is if you open a page incognito, that session will not have usually will not have the cookies there from whatever you were previously searching. So it'll be a bit more of a randomized information. So it's helpful to do it that way. Obviously, it's not 100% randomized. There are certain nuances in regards to the way that things are set up with the tech to know who you are and kind of leverage things that way. But generally speaking, if you open an incognito, it will make sure more or less that anything that you were previously searching with your regular browser does not affect the results that you are getting, and you get a bit more of a randomized or generic kind of information that you can use. But it's a very simple way. It's not the perfect way. You're not going to get all the different keywords. You're not going to see how popular those keywords are. So that can be, it's a good way to get started, but not the perfect way. What's closer to perfect is Google Trends, which is essentially just Google's system where you are able to see, put in a keyword, and then Google will show you variations of the keyword and the geographic frequency of that keyword. Obviously, you will probably be limiting it to the US because you're probably going to be selling in the US. So you will limit your search to the US. You don't have to do it regionally. When it comes to e-commerce, assume national. Unless you're selling on your own website and you are restricting it to certain regions, in which case then proceed to search that way. But I recommend national. So you'll do US, and then you can put in base words the way that bookshelf serves as a base word, and then see what the search frequency is. Is it a highly searched word? Is it something that doesn't really show up? You can use that, and you can see the different variations, and that will help you come up with the keywords that you are going to input into your product, because you are going to be using the keywords that seem to have a lot of traffic. So you want to you want to just come up with that. Alternatively, you could just not do any of the research, and maybe you just really want to get quickly started listing the products, and you're fine with just dumping in a bunch of keywords early on, and you say, okay, I'm gonna come back to this later, I'll make improvements on it later. You do have that ability. Keywords aren't major influences, they're more subtle influences. I always recommend high quality at the start. The better you get, the better foot you take moving forward. Always the best choice. But I understand that in business, sometimes it's better to start faster and grab any traffic and then adjust as you move forward. And that is valid. So in that case, you can actually come up with keywords just based off of the content you have for your product, based off the bullet points, based off the title, what type of product it is. Just come up with your own list of keywords and then dump those into your item submission, and then start with those. And then later on, you can either do your research or you can see the feedback and adjust accordingly. Now, you're not going to be able to see how if a keyword is doing good or bad, and in pretty much most of the marketplaces, they don't show you that data. Some might give you reports that will let you see the marketplace wide information, but these tend to be something limited more to suppliers and more something you have to ask them to provide you. You might not always have access to a report. So that's something to keep in mind. There isn't really a perfect way of gauging whether a keyword works or not, but we do know, and marketplaces do say, that keywords do have a impact on your listing. They won't tell you how much it is because they never share the algorithm weights, but it's definitely in there. So you do want to make sure your keywords are good and exist, even if it's not immediate, even if it's not massive. You definitely want to have keywords in there. So now we're going to get into the process of item creation and submission. This is how you actually enter in all that content information. And I have here some common information required in this process. There are two main ways of putting content and creating an item, and having content in it. There's manual, which means that you are creating the product through the marketplace's website, through a platform or a system or a tool they have set up, and entering it directly there. Common information that's going to be required is item title, description, category, and identifier, which usually means a UPC for each product, and a model number as well. As a SKU or model number, you'll want to have that input as well. Price and MSRP. Some places might not have MSRP, and in some places, price might actually be cost because you are in a supply relationship, and MSRP is just to make sure that the retailer sets the price, because in a supply relationship with online retailers, you don't get to set the listing price. They set the listing price. You just give them a wholesale cost, but you can give them an MSRP to help guide them to a accurate pricing level. But if you're a third-party seller on a marketplace, MSRP usually won't matter too much. Sometimes some marketplaces will show the MSRP that you enter, but usually it's not a major thing. Your main thing there is a price, because that is the price that you are going to be selling it for. Images can mean different things on different marketplaces. Some ask for image links. So you need to have a link generated for the product, which means you need to upload it somewhere where you can share a link from. People use Google Drive and Dropbox. They work. They're not perfect. I actually recommend that you create a WordPress. So if you've created a website and you use WordPress, you already have the game. If not, you should probably look into that and see if that is ideal for you. And if you do get WordPress, this will apply to you. But WordPress has a media library, and you are able to, when you upload your image assets to it, you do get a link for each of those products, and most marketplaces will accept those. Or if you listed your images on, say, Amazon, you can actually go to Amazon, open your product on Amazon.com, click on your images, and then right-click on the image you need, and then open image new tab, or copy image link, and you can actually use that link on another marketplace. That will actually let you be able to link, pull the image from there. But most marketplaces actually have image uploads, and most supplier online retailers also have image uploads. There are very few examples where they exclusively require links, but do keep in mind that there are marketplaces and retailers that use links. So just make sure that you have your image links somewhere, and you are able to share image links with a URL, because some places might not accept uploads or might not have an upload system, but most places will have an upload system. So as long as you upload in one place, you'll be able to use the URL there usually to share that. And in the manual process, it's usually uploads. Product dimension weight, you put that product details in there. There are technical information required, and then shipping dimension because of the shipping information you need to put in there. Some marketplaces require it for if they're paying your shipping, or maybe you have a system that lets you print a shipping label. They need to have the shipping dimensions and weights to be able to accurately give you that information. So you'll need to add that in there manually. Now for a template, and there are actually examples of templates that I will be showing. But when it comes to a template, it's easier for bulk, but certain fields are also a bit of a hassle. So as you can see here, common information required, I actually left out images, and that's because a lot of the times you're actually able to prepare a template. Templates will ask for images, but the problem with a template is you can't upload to a template because it is an Excel file and it will not process if you put like just drop an image in there, insert an image in there. It's not going to recognize that. So I usually recommend leaving the image blank in most, and then uploading the product and then adding images manually through uploads, because it's a lot easier. But there are, again, marketplaces and retailers that don't allow that, in which case then you will need to provide a link. One that comes to mind is Overstock. Overstock uses links for the images. So in the template, you actually have to put down a URL to that image asset, for image 1, image 2, image 3, image 4, image 5. So that is something comes up, but it's not for every marketplace and retailer. So I usually leave that out of the common information required. I find that manually uploading images is a lot more convenient than trying to use links in a template. But everything else is similar: title, description, category, identifier, product model number, SKU or SKU, price and MSRP. Now variations can be done in templates. Some marketplace and retailers require you to do it from a template because they don't have a manual way of creating a variation, or in certain situations, creating it manually is too much of a hassle and it's easier to do it on a template. Now, you don't have to create a variation on a template when you're first opening the item. A lot of places actually allow you to use any place that has templates. Usually means that they also allow updates via templates. So what I usually do is, especially on Amazon, where people are creating variations, you can actually create variations manually, but I found using the template to be a lot more convenient and faster. So what people will do is they will create the products as new items, and then once the items are created, they will get another template, and then they will just put in the product identifiers, because when you're doing an update, you don't need to put all the information again. You just need to put the necessary information so the system knows which product is being edited, which is usually the model number, fire. In Amazon's case, you don't need to use an UPC. You can, but after you create an item on Amazon, they will give you an ASIN, an ASIN number. So you can actually use that as the identifier on the template, and then create your variation with the existing items. And it's a lot faster because the items exist. You have everything under control there. Errors can happen, but I've generally found that templates for updating content and creating variations are a lot faster than doing it manually. And then, as usual, product dimension and weight and shipping dimension and weight will be in a template. So let me go ahead and jump in and show you some examples of the templates. Now, this is a Walmart template. I believe this is for a Walmart DSV, which is a Walmart supplier relationship, not Walmart Marketplace, which is third party. But the logic is the same. As you can see, the template has SKU, product name, product ID, type, and product ID description. You can see it's required. Some of these will be drop downs. Some of them will be text boxes. So some of them will be numbers. So you will enter information. As you can see here for images, it asks for a link and via image URL, but it's recommended, which means you don't actually have to do it to submit the item, because submit the template, because to submit the template, only required has to be filled out. Anything that's optional, recommended, you don't have to fill it out to successfully upload your template. And you can always go in and manually make small adjustments to those optional ones. Or in the case of images, you would manually go into their system and upload the image files to it. So you don't have to deal with adding URLs or creating URLs to add URLs. So this is an example of that. In Amazon, you can see similar style. They have it set up. Each color represents a certain type of information they're looking for. The first one is the main core information. Second one is images. Third one is variation. Fourth one is basic data about the product, and so on. These are snippets of the templates. They're actually a lot longer. They have a lot more columns than you see here. But they will usually ask all kinds of information, and the exact types of information will vary depending on the category you choose, because each category will have its own type of template where they are asking product relevant information. But again, same thing in Amazon. And this is an Amazon Seller Central template. Same thing as with Walmart. Only required has to be filled out, and you don't see it here. But basically, what happens is that if you choose the product type with this drop down, what actually happens is that Amazon has a macro in the template where it will then proceed to highlight the cells in the row. Every row that has a feed product type will be highlighted in red cells. So each of these borders will turn red around the cell. And then when you enter information, it will turn green. And that's Amazon's way of saying, if the cell is red, it's a required field. If it's not a required field, it won't have a red cell around it that turns green. It'll just be the regular Excel cell with, the typical light gray coloring, because Amazon will highlight which cells are required, which have to be filled out for your convenience. So, that's something that they have in their templates to make things easier versus Walmart, where Walmart had just the required, optional, recommended. And then here's a Wayfair one, similar, where you see required, you see optional. There are certain things that are optional that you should probably fill out if you have that information. So in case of Wayfair, if you do have a UPC code and an ASIN for the item because you opened it on Amazon, you should probably put that information in there. Otherwise, if you don't, you obviously skip it. Brand, for example, too, you should definitely put your brand in there, even if it is optional. So there are things nuances like that you want to keep in mind. One thing is that, and I'm going to use the Wayfair one here to give that idea of how different types of templates you'll see. You can see down here in the picture, there are sheets inside of the file, and these sheets are for additional information. As you can see, additional videos, additional documents. So if your product has any of these additional aspects to it, you are able to go in the sheet and then add that as necessary. So templates will have some kind of structure, some kind of format. Each marketplace and retailer has their own. Some are easy, some are straightforward, some are a bit unnecessarily complex in my opinion, but that is just simply because of how they have their database set up, and they need to make sure all the information that they put into the Excel file can integrate with whatever their database has to make it a bit more of an automated process. Because what happens is that when you submit a template into a marketplace or retailer, it creates, it puts that information into their database based off of their database structure. And if the headers don't match, if there's any kind of error like that, any kind of validation error, the file will fail, and then their edits will have to be made. If it's a header information, it might be a technical issue that they need to look into. So you're kind of going off of that marketplace or that retailer's database when you're filling these templates out. But again, if you are opening bulk items, manual is not very time effective and cost effective, because with manual, you tend to spend a lot more time opening multiple items. Whereas in a template, if a lot of the items have copy paste information, maybe it's the same. Maybe you have 100 products, but they're all part of the same collection, so they'll have some of the same marketing information. If you use a template, you can just copy paste the necessary information accordingly to create the template for that. Now we're going to get into something that's packages all of us together, and that is master data. When it comes to master data, it's better to have this early on rather than create it later when you have a whole bunch of products existing. And the reason for that is because you want to make sure that you have all the necessary information for your product, the basic information on hand. So as you create products on different marketplaces, as you apply to become a supplier with different retailers, and as you add products to your own website, you should be able to be keeping track of all the information that will allow you to more easily fill out these templates. That will be easier to fill out manually and be easier to fix any errors that come up. Because some marketplaces have issues where they have a bot that goes around editing listings based off of what it predicts to be a better bullet point or better title, and you need to go back and fix that information. And having the template here, having the master data will help expedite that process, because it'll just be a case of copy paste the correct information to a template and then send that in for update. If you're starting off, Excel or Google Sheets is perfectly fine. You will be putting in information like product name, product title, product barcode, UPC, size, stuff like that, color, basic information. You don't have to go overboard. You can use an Excel or Google Sheets. But let's say you have a lot of products. Maybe you have 1,000 SKUs, and there are different collections, different types of products. In that case, an Excel master list might get a bit overwhelming. So there are actually services out there called product data syndication or product information management. They are distinct, but they both do function as places to upload your master data information. So product data syndication services actually connect to marketplaces and retailers who they are partnered with. So it's not something that's available for everybody. It depends on who you are going to be working with. But usually they will have their marketplace or retailer partners, and you can actually syndicate information from that sheet to those marketplaces to create items and update items. So Syndigo, for example, they are partnered with Home Depot, Amazon, Walmart. So you are able to create your master data on Syndigo, for example, and then they will give you like an option to syndicate to marketplaces, and then it will ask you to fill out the columns, because each marketplace, as you saw in the templates, asks slightly different questions for their database. So obviously your master data will not have all that information. So the PDS, product data syndication, will tell you which columns need information in to finish the syndication, which then you will then be able to input. And then the system will transmit that data to the place to create your product. Or update your product if you have errors and you want to make sure you update it, or maybe you've created new content and you want to feed that to your marketplaces. Now, these do have costs. These are expenses that you invest in. So unless you have a lot of products and you are on a lot of marketplaces and you need to manage them from a central location, if you can keep an Excel file, if you are in that situation where you do need to manage multiple marketplace and retailers, and you do have a lot of products, then these are the service providers, examples of service providers that you would reach out to set something up like that. These aren't the only ones. There's actually a lot out there. These are just some of the primary ones that popped up when you searched. But always, if you are looking and you see someone you want to use, they seem to have good prices, just check who they're partnered with to see if their partners match the places you sell on, just to make sure that you're compatible. So you're not, you're not having half your marketplaces set up syndicated to, because the other half aren't partnered with them. The more the merrier in that case. So just make sure that you check that out. But these are usually a subscription as a service. So you are paying a kind of a monthly fee, as well as like a setup fee for the integration. And they will give they will give you somebody who will walk you through the process of setting this up. So there's a bit of a technical element to it too. So that's why I say early on, Excel and Google Sheets are more than sufficient for most categories. And then later on, as you are onboarding, as you're getting more products, as you are entering more marketplaces, then you can consider getting in touch with one of these service providers to see if they can help automate your process there. So you are able to spend more time creating better content and then being able to syndicate it rather than spending time trying to get your content set up on all the marketplaces and updating all the marketplaces. So we're going to jump into the Q&A. I know we covered a lot of bases, from the type of content to how the content is uploaded to managing your content and data. So if there's any questions in regards to that, I can try to help out with that. So we're going to take a look at chat. No questions there. And then Q&A, nothing there. Okay. All right. So I don't see any questions, but I will touch upon one more thing, restating it again. If you ever run into a situation where you're not sure about your content, look and see what other people have put on there. Look at if you're going to sell on Amazon and you're going to sell shoes, look at who's selling at shoes on Amazon, who's on the first page, who has the bestseller tag on it. See how they have it set up. This will easily get you started. Don't get stuck on trying to figure out what type of content. Don't get stuck on is my content good enough. If your content is similar-ish to what's existing on those marketplaces and those categories and those type of products, you're ready to start selling. You might actually have more opportunities to improve your content to help increase your sales and help get more customers to buy your product, but that is something you can work on. Your goal is to just have the content you need to get started selling. Question here. So how do Amazon search terms relate to Google search terms? There is no relationship. Amazon's e-commerce ecosystem is its own area outside of Google. In fact, this is even in their advertising. Now, this isn't a conversation about advertising, but generally what I'm saying is that Amazon's own advertising system on that is Google. And same thing with search terms. Amazon search terms are exclusively based off of Amazon's own data. Amazon will use its own traffic data, its own search data, independently from Google. Google will give you kind of Google's information. And the reason I say I recommend Google is because a lot of people use Google. So you will generally get a good, the metrics will generally be good. The data will generally be good. It won't be perfect if, let's say, you are going to be selling on Amazon. But if people are shopping for products, some people tend to search on Google first, and then they go to Amazon or Walmart or wherever. So you can actually use Google early on to get an idea of how hot a keyword is, how searched it is, and use that to kind of move forward. But if you do ever set up on Amazon and you're planning to make your focus on Amazon, you should definitely start using Amazon, that strategy of checking search terms on Amazon, because you need to be able to make sure you're hitting Amazon's traffic. Okay, next question. How much Amazon, Walmart charge this product? So technically, this goes back to part one, but technically you don't get charged to list a product. You get charged to become a seller and sell your product. Amazon does have a subscription, a professional subscription. So technically, to list any product on Amazon as a business, you are going to be paying $40 a month to be, to get subscribed on that. In regards to Walmart charges to list a product, Walmart doesn't have a subscription fee. Walmart only takes referral fees. Amazon also takes referral fees. So you won't get charged to list a product unless, in Amazon's case, you use an individual seller account, in which case they will charge you, I think it was 99 cents or something like that. But normally you don't get listed to charge. You don't get charged to list a product. You get charged selling a product. And in Amazon's case, you also get charged for the privilege of selling on their platform. Whereas Walmart Marketplace doesn't have a monthly charge, but they have a referral fee. Average referral fees is about 15%. It varies by category, but average is about 15% off of the listing price. They will take that as their fee for selling the products. All right, so upload videos. Facebook business, is there a way to upload to multiple platforms at once? Now, I'm not familiar with any kind of omni-channel service that does it for videos. Even image syndication has been a bit spotty in regards to the amount of software services available to syndicate imagery to multiple marketplaces. A lot of those products, data syndication that I mentioned, is in that pool. I'm not familiar with StreamYard, but what I would recommend is you're going to want to ask them a few questions, but ask if they are partnered with the platforms that you want to upload your videos to. Ask them if they're aware of the policies and guidelines, because the problem with video omnichannel is that marketplaces have very disparate requirements on in uploading videos. Some even require you to ask permission first before they authorize you to upload videos. So I'm not sure how any service provider would be getting around the number of different rules. So you'll want to check who they're partnered with first, and then you'll want to ask them how they're doing it, and how they're handling the guidelines and the rules required from the marketplaces in regards to uploading. Because some, like in Amazon, for example, they might say you need to be brand registry to upload videos. Walmart doesn't even have a video uploading section. Walmart is you have to open a case, contact the support team, and then the support team, and then give them a link where they will then take the video, vet it, and then maybe consider uploading it. So there's just all that variance in there. So like I said, I'm not aware of any omni-channel that can do that, simply because the ecosystem is not really set up in a standardized enough way. So if you do find somebody, just check with them, see how they have that partnership set up. Are they in contact with those marketplaces? Do they have a contact there that they can speak to make sure that they're able to host in multiple platforms? And if you feel like their answers seem to be sufficient, feel free to test it out. Works, that's great. If not, then they're probably not ready yet for that kind of omni-channel process. Content does not need to be copyrighted. Keep in mind, so when any kind of content you create, according to US law, is technically copywritten as you create it. Now, there is copyright registration you can do that will give that certificate that provides a bit more additional protection. But for most content, I don't recommend that. I only recommend it if your product is something design or visual heavy, in which case, say, let's go back to flooring, rugs. You've probably shopped for rugs. You've seen that there's a lot of different designs out there. What some companies will do is that because they came up with that design, and if the design is something they came up with, or their manufacturer came up with, and they partnered with them to sell that product, they will file a copyright registration for that design to make sure that people don't copy that design and then compete with them using their design that they came up with. That would be a copyright matter. Patents only apply to any kind of invention where patents are there. If you can patent something, you definitely should. If you are selling it and you do patent it, feel free to include the patent number in your description wherever you list it, just to make sure that people understand that this product is patented and protected by law. And trademarks are usually for your brand. You should definitely apply for a trademark for your brand that you will be using to sell online or sell anywhere, whatever you're going to be doing business with, simply because one, protection, and two, nowadays marketplaces are starting to make it mandatory to have your brand have a I mentioned brand registry with Amazon, for example. Amazon provides trademark brands additional features to market their products and additional protections. So I'd recommend it. Do keep in mind the USPTO is quite overwhelmed, so it will take some time for trademarks to go through. So I would recommend finding a trademark attorney who can help maybe speed things up and make sure that you get the serial number you need to at least be able to do your brand registry on Amazon, for example. So you'll want to do that, but I usually recommend nowadays that you definitely start trademarking, because there not only is it a protection thing, now marketplaces are A, requiring it, and B, also giving additional features to people who do actually have that trademark, versus companies that don't have any kind of trademark brands. Can I sell both or at the same time with Amazon? Um, so yes, you can sell at the same time on Amazon and Walmart. What you are asking for is a shipping and inventory management software. Technically inventory management, but a lot of inventory management softwares include a shipping component, just on the basis of they go together. But what you're looking for is an inventory management software. The only thing you'll need to keep in mind is there are services out there that do that, that offer that. What you want to keep in mind is you want to make sure that they're partnered with Amazon and Walmart, so they can do the integration, and they will ask you to provide the information they need to do the integration, if you sign up with that service. And two is they need to be able to receive orders from Walmart and Amazon, because what happens is that if they receive those orders, they will be able to deduct from your main inventory list. So your inventory management software service that you use, you will put down your full inventory, and then as orders come in from Amazon or Walmart, the inventory will be deducted from that main master list. But keep in mind that you still, if they don't have syndication, they should have syndication if they are integrated. But for some reason, if they don't, and they mention that, if you sign up with a service like that, you will still have to manually enter inventory in both places. Nowadays, most people have syndication because Amazon has API, Walmart has API, so everybody should be integrated. So just make sure you check that, make sure they are integrated, make sure they syndicate. And once that's there, you will actually be able to set that up. And like I said, it's usually going to be shipping and inventory management software service. So they'll probably be offering things like creating the labels for your shipments and providing the tracking information to Walmart and Amazon orders come in. Most popular one you've probably heard of if you've looked it up is ShipStation. Technically, it's order management, because when orders come in, you use ShipStation services to create labels to ship it out. But they do, I believe, they have a inventory component as well to help as the orders come in, to serve as a master list that will syndicate the inventory information. So yeah, you're able to do that. Alternatively, if you have the budget, you can also pay a freelance programmer to make a custom software. Because like I said, Amazon, Walmart, eBay, they all have API now. It's not very difficult for a developer to develop a basic system to do those kind of things. So if you have the budget for that, you can do that as well. But there are service providers out there that will provide a subscription as a service that you can pay monthly for. So yeah. Don't see any other questions.
Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, I want to say thank you to Ahmet for sharing your expertise with us today. We do have about 6 more minutes, so we definitely can fit in a question or two. So if you have a question, feel free to post that now. Okay, but if not, again, I just want to remind you all that this was part 2 of our e-commerce planning webinar. Oh, we have another question, Ahmet, in the chat.
What website hosting? Okay, so for website hosting, that depends on what your plan is. If you are planning on building a dedicated website to sell e-commerce, sell on your own website, I recommend taking a look at things like Shopify, because Shopify gives you a full package. Obviously, there's a bit more cost because they're providing both hosting and e-commerce suites with your website, with the the website they give you, and then you just integrate your domain name into it. They have that option there. So if you're planning to build a website to sell from, I personally recommend Shopify, just simply because it's what people tend to use. It's very simple, very straightforward. If you have a bit more technical skill, you could get WordPress hosting on thing like Bluehost or DigitalOcean, stuff like that, big name hosting companies who provide WordPress hosting and then integrate WooCommerce into it. But like I said, it's a bit more technical. It requires a bit more effort. So if you are building a website, but you're not really planning on selling on it, maybe you're just planning on doing a bit of branding, putting some pictures in there, but you don't actually expect people to purchase from your website, you can use stuff like Wix or Weebly, where you can build out a website on their service, pay them a monthly fee for the hosting, and then integrate your domain name to make it, to build your website. But if it's going to be e-commerce, I recommend Shopify, just because they have a full package that will make it a lot easier to get started selling online. Oh, another question here. A good service for shipping. Yes, shipping is a challenge for everybody nowadays, with the rates going up year over year. So for a small business, I mean, like I mentioned, there are services like ShipStation, for example, who say they give a good rate, but you pay a subscription fee. But honestly, if you are selling on Etsy, which I assume means you are selling stuff that you make yourself, maybe your volume is not massive, I would actually look into checking if there are any mailing services in your area. You might have ever seen them if you've driven around, where they have like mailing and packaging service, where you can go in and then they'll give you you'll give them an item, and then they'll prepare it to shipment. You give them the shipping address, blah blah blah. The reason for that is because they tend to actually get decent rates for shipping, whether it's USPS, UPS, FedEx, because they one, as a business, they qualify for a certain discount, and two is that they tend to have a lot of volume if they're a popular area, because their volume will give them a discount on volume with whatever shipping carrier they use. So I would look at that. The only caveat with those is that you personally have to go to them and drop off the products, but you can usually get in a relationship with them where you speak with them. You say, I'm a small business here, I do e-commerce, I ship this many products, usually on average, this is my average volume. Can I email my orders, in the sense of emailing them the addresses and stuff like that? They can prepare the labels for you, and then you would be able to attach it and just drop it off with them, and they can email the labels back and stuff. It's a bit more of a traditional aspect. It's not really something that's similar to those services online like ShipStation. So you'll be working with a local business to do that. But the advantage is that they can usually give you a decent price that maybe stuff like ShipStation can't, simply because maybe the ShipStation rate for you is a thing. In the chat too, I do see 3PL. 3PL is also a good option, because 3PL, as mentioned in the chat, they do everything, and 3PLs are, you can usually find a lot of the local 3PLs, especially in New Jersey, and especially in North Jersey. There's actually a lot of 3PLs popping up. You would be able to work with a 3PL and they would do everything for you. So that is another option. You can reach out to them and see if they can make the arrangement there. So you'll probably want to be looking into a bit of local businesses to see if they can actually give you a better rate and better service than using the online ones that operate nationally, and maybe kind of don't give you the best deal from the get-go. So that's something that's worth looking into in the area. For FBA, Amazon will give you the option to use their system. Now, both ShipStation and Amazon will say that they're giving you kind of a discounted postage rate, but it's not going to be the best compared to if you were to work with one of those mailing providers or a 3PL. Now, if you're not sending a lot, I would probably recommend using Amazon, simply because keep in mind, if you're using ShipStation, you are also paying an additional subscription fee. So keep that in mind when you're considering the cost differences. So if you were to use ShipStation, you would be paying a monthly fee plus the shipping fee on top of what you're already paying Amazon as a monthly fee. So if you check Amazon and the price isn't too ridiculous, and it's you don't think you're going to get a better rate from anyone else in regards to the shipping you're doing, I would just recommend Amazon, because the ShipStation discount probably isn't going to be enough to make up the difference when you bake in the monthly fees that you are going to be paying ShipStation to use their services, because you're already paying Amazon a fee to use their services. So you might as well use the labels that they provide to you if you are not using a 3PL or one of those mailing companies in your locale.
Okay, so that looks like it was our last question. So thank you again, Ahmet, for that informative presentation and for your time. And thank you all for your questions today. So today's webinar is part 2 of our e-commerce planning series, and I will go into where you can register for the next part, which will be part 3 in just a little bit. And for those of you here that are in Essex County and you are looking to set up that one-on-one no-cost business counseling with Ahmet, you can go ahead and click on that raise hand button here on Zoom, and I will take note of your name and set that appointment up with you, Ahmet, I'm sorry. Or you can just visit our website here. It's on the page here, www.rnsbdc.com, and request that counseling. So either or, each method would suffice. And our one-on-one consultations are at no cost, so I do strongly advise taking advantage of that. At this time, I would like to direct everyone to the chat. I'll be posting some of our upcoming events, as well as part 3 to today's e-commerce planning workshop webinars. Hopefully everyone's seeing that by now. So the first link is part 3, our e-commerce planning part 3 advanced webinar. And the second link will be the part 1. So if you find that you need a little bit more of a refresher on the e-commerce process, you can go ahead and register for part 1 again. So part 3 will be on September 10th at 12 p.m. and part 1 will be on November 3rd at 3 p.m. So feel free to register for those 2 webinars. And you can also visit our website, rnsbdc.com/training, or our Eventbrite page to register for any workshops and webinars that best fits your business needs. And the webinars here are just a few of the ones that we are hosting this year. We are hosting many other webinars and workshops in topics such as financing, access to capital, COVID disaster loans, marketing and branding, e-commerce, credit counseling, startup assistance, state certification, government contracting, human resourcing, and so much more. So again, visit our website or our Eventbrite page, and you will definitely find a webinar or workshop that best fits your business needs. I do want to remind you all that within 48 to 72 hours, you will be receiving the presentation slides as well as the video replay from today's webinar. So you can have all this information and you'll be able to apply the strategies and techniques to help your business grow. After this webinar in the browser, you will see a survey pop up. That survey will help us to adjust our presentations in the future, as well as give us some information on the type of assistance you may be needing for your business. So if you have just a minute or 2 to complete that, your feedback is much appreciated. And with that, we will now end today's webinar. I want to say thank you again to our presenter, Ahmet, for sharing our expertise. Thank you to all of our attendees for joining us today on this Friday afternoon and for taking the time out to participate and ask your question in today's webinars. And we look forward to seeing you all at our future webinars and workshops. Have a great weekend, everyone.